Hey guys, this is Holli Duke, counselor at Brookline, coming to you from my office in my laundry room, which was the most logical place for me to place an office during these strange times. So, anyways, I just wanted to say hello first of all to counselors who I haven't met. This presentation is for counselors in any role group. So welcome. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So today we're going to talk about the imposter syndrome. And I first learned of the imposter syndrome when I started the Kentucky Counseling Association Mentoring Leadership Program. We talked about many topics that first year, and it has been a topic that we continue to talk about and present on, and so I thought it would be a good topic for me to bring to our counseling role group. If you've ever had that feeling of why me, why do I deserve these accomplishments, what did I do, am I good enough? Those are all symptoms of the imposter syndrome. So let's get started. So basically, doing the research, definition of the imposter syndrome is the feeling of being a fraud or thinking that you're less than you are. It's actually a psychological condition, and it's associated with being a high achiever. Which is ironic because you're a high achiever and you're thinking that you're less than you are, or that you're a fraud. And it stems from our thinking processes. So during the research, I came across a quote from Audrey Irvin, who's a psychologist, that the imposter syndrome is characterized by a chronic feeling of inadequacy, incompetence, and fraudulence despite objective success. And it's hard to internalize success and genuinely hold the belief that you're competent and capable. So like I was saying, if you've ever thought, if you suffer from anxiety and self-doubt when you shouldn't, if you over prepare or procrastinate because of this fear, do you have trouble taking compliments or thinking that your success is because of luck or good timing? Do you set the bar too high for yourself and then beat yourself up when you don't reach that goal? Do you feel relief rather than pride when you finish a project or accomplish something? Do you focus on more what you could do better than recognizing what you have achieved? Do you worry people think you know more than you do, or worry you know less than you should? And then have you ever wondered, who am I to think that I have ideas that are worth sharing with other people? And I would suspect that people who suffer from imposter syndrome struggle to do presentations like these. Why would people want to learn that from me, or why am I experienced enough to do the presentations? Which is why we should all step out of our comfort zone and present, because we all have wonderful things that we can offer in the counseling field. So just a quick video on the imposter syndrome I found. It'll be very short, and it's a TED Talk.
Even after writing 11 books and winning several prestigious awards, Maya Angelou couldn't escape the nagging doubt that she hadn't really earned her accomplishments. Albert Einstein experienced something similar. He described himself as an involuntary swindler whose work didn't deserve as much attention as it had received. Accomplishments at the level of Angelou's or Einstein's are rare, but their feeling of fraudulence is extremely common. Why can't so many of us shake feelings that we haven't earned our accomplishments, or that our ideas and skills aren't worthy of others' attention? Psychologist Pauline Rose Clance was the first to study this unwarranted sense of insecurity. In her work as a therapist, she noticed many of her undergraduate patients shared a concern. Though they had high grades, they didn't believe they deserved their spots at the university. Some even believed their acceptance had been an admissions error. While Clance knew these fears were unfounded, she could also remember feeling the exact same way in graduate school. She and her patients experienced something that goes by a number of names: imposter phenomenon, imposter experience, and imposter syndrome. Together with colleague Suzanne Imes, Clance first studied imposterism in female college students and faculty. Their work established pervasive feelings of fraudulence in this group. Since that first study, the same thing has been established across gender, race, age, and a huge range of occupations, though it may be more prevalent and disproportionately affect the experiences of underrepresented or disadvantaged groups. To call it a syndrome is to downplay how universal it is. It's not a disease or an abnormality, and it isn't necessarily tied to depression, anxiety, or self-esteem. Where do these feelings of fraudulence come from? People who are highly skilled or accomplished tend to think others are just as skilled. This can spiral into feelings that they don't deserve accolades and opportunities over other people. And as Angelou and Einstein experienced, there's often no threshold of accomplishment that puts these feelings to rest. Feelings of imposterism aren't restricted to highly skilled individuals either. Everyone is susceptible to a phenomenon known as pluralistic ignorance, where we each doubt ourselves privately, but believe we're alone in thinking that way, because no one else voices their doubts. Since it's tough to really know how hard our peers work, how difficult they find certain tasks, or how much they doubt themselves, there's no easy way to dismiss feelings that we're less capable than the people around us. Intense feelings of imposterism can prevent people from sharing their great ideas or applying for jobs and programs where they'd excel. At least so far, the most surefire way to combat imposter syndrome is to talk about it. Many people suffering from imposter syndrome are afraid that if they ask about their performance, their fears will be confirmed, and even when they receive positive feedback, it often fails to ease feelings of fraudulence. But on the other hand, hearing that an advisor or mentor has experienced feelings of imposterism can help relieve those feelings. The same goes for peers. Even simply finding out there's a term for these feelings can be an incredible relief. Once you're aware of the phenomenon, you can combat your own imposter syndrome by collecting and revisiting positive feedback. One scientist who kept blaming herself for problems in her lab started to document the causes every time something went wrong. Eventually, she realized most of the problems came from equipment failure and came to recognize her own competence. We may never be able to banish these feelings entirely, but we can have open conversations about academic or professional challenges. With increasing awareness of how common these experiences are, perhaps we can feel freer to be frank about our feelings and build confidence in some simple truths. You have talent, you are capable, and you belong. Everyone can use a little extra kick of confidence sometimes. Find out some tips and
Okay, so in the video they talked about imposter syndrome possibly affecting women more predominantly than men, and that it's that fear of failure, that crippling perfectionism is common in those suffering with imposter syndrome, and that you're actually it's most common among high achieving individuals, and we're unable to internalize our accomplishments and that fear of being exposed. So in my research, I found that it was first documented around 1978, but it's not a disorder recognized in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And ability and achievement have no bearing on who is affected. It is most common among those that are high achieving, but we'll talk later about, celebrities are affected. A wide range of people can be affected by the imposter syndrome. And it seems to have become worse lately because of social media, where we see or we think we see what other people's lives are like, and we begin to compare ourselves. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the presentation. So doing my research, some common indicators that I found that people who suffer from the imposter syndrome may have trait anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, and social anxiety disorder, and pervasive self-doubt, which can characterize your past, your present, and your future experiences if you don't get control of what you're suffering from, the imposter syndrome. You have a persistent fear of, and this is a recurring theme throughout the presentation and throughout the research that I've done, that you have fear of being found out or discovered as a fraud in spite of, your success. That feeling of, what your boss thinks of you, and did I do a good job, when you're very capable of completing your job, thinking about that fear of, what does your boss think of you, and do they think that you're doing a good job? And then them discovering that, oh, well, maybe you're not capable, all those feelings. Attributing success to luck or a fluke, a feeling or relief, or even distress in place of happiness and pride in your accomplishments. And then looking for validation in authority figures, like I was saying, your boss or a family member, and then giving them the power to determine if you're successful or not, when it needs to come from within, which we'll talk about later. And I like some of the quotes that I found online when I was doing my research, that it's ironic because imposter syndrome is the province of successful, of the high achievers, of the perfectionists. So it's ironic that you would have the syndrome that you don't feel good enough, or that you aren't accomplished. There wasn't a lot of information on causes, where does it come from, but a lot of it stems back to personality traits, having perfectionism, and having extremely high personal standards for yourself. Sometimes it could come from your family background, families that value achievement above all else, or competency as a core value. I remember in my family, anything below an A was not good, only A's. So that valuing that above all else. And then the individualistic versus collective culture, where we value being an individual and setting those high standards of accomplishment. And there's still other factors. Previous criticisms or failures can affect how you're feeling. Poor time management, feeling unprepared, that you have lack of skills or knowledge, comparing yourself to others, and the need to be respected could be causes. And so I've talked a little bit about who it affects. And it can be everyone and anyone, from a CEO to a college student. Lots of celebrities have spoken out about feeling like an imposter, actors, and not just performance-based jobs, but doctors and things of those nature have spoken out about it too. Not I read a quote from the COO of Facebook, or someone high up in the World Health Organization. I mean, if you do the research, you'll find that recently a lot of people have spoken up about this issue. And 70% of people will experience at least one episode of the imposter syndrome. And like I said, some researchers argue that women are affected more than men, but I've also read some research that might not be true, that they because of society and gender roles, men may be less likely to externalize their feelings associated with the imposter syndrome. So they're experiencing it, we just might not know about it. They have a harder time talking about it. And like the video said, minorities appear to be more vulnerable due to lack of representation and discrimination. So here are some of the just a few celebrities that have spoken out. In the resources, there's a great article on Michelle Obama, and she's done a lot of work talking about the imposter syndrome. Here she says, I still have a little bit of imposter syndrome. It never goes away, that you're actually listening to me. And Mike Myers, I still believe that anytime the no talent police will come and arrest me. It's just that fear of not being good enough, and that you don't deserve what you have. Like he's saying, no talent. Emma Watson, it's almost like the better I do, the more my feeling of inadequacy actually increases, because I'm just going, any moment someone's going to find out I'm a total fraud and that I don't deserve any of what I've achieved. So again, high achieving people with that fear. And then Ricky Gervais, the best advice I ever received is no one else knows what they're doing either. So kind of quotes like that can help us feel better that we're all, a lot of us feel this way. And some of the way to overcome it is to talk about it, which we'll talk about ways to overcome the imposter syndrome in just a minute. Before we do that, there are 5 types that I discovered when doing my research. And I definitely fit into one of these categories. So the first one, and I have my little cheat sheet here so I can help talk about these. Okay, so the first one is the perfectionist. So you should deliver a perfect performance 100% of the time, A+ work. Nothing less than perfect is acceptable. I have to delegate because I hate to delegate because quality control suffers. So, do everything yourself because you're the only one that can do it right. And no one can do something right 100% of the time. But then you feel bad when you can't. And you think that others hold you to this high standard. And this can apply in work, at home. You hold yourself to such high standards that you can't possibly live up to them. And you beat yourself up about it. So what you can do is to, I found these types in the mindset changes. If you do a daily mantra or self-talk, whichever one of these types fits with you, I thought it'd be a great idea to print this quote and read it to yourself to help you get through this. So new thoughts for the perfectionist is, I can't wait for everything to be perfect. I have to just take action and correct as I go. I need to let myself move forward. Sometimes good is good enough. I learn more when I make mistakes. And actually, this one made me think of Good Enough Now by Jessica Pettit. If you haven't listened to her, she's a diversity speaker, and she talks about doing the best that you can do with what you have some of the time and being good enough now. And so definitely made me think of her. So do some research on her as well. But, the mindset that you are good enough now, and everything doesn't have to be perfect. The second type is the expert. If I were really smart, I would already know everything I need to know to do this. I can't put myself out there or start a business or go after a promotion until I have more education, training, experience. So holding yourself back from taking those chances because you think you need such and such level of education, training, or experience. It drives you to get as much knowledge or skill as possible. And they say women suffer from this mindset, that they need to be at a certain threshold or have a certain knowledge or experience to be successful, or to be competent in a skill. This type of mindset doesn't believe in learning as you go, and people won't apply for jobs when they're posted because they don't have all of the qualifications listed, and women specifically won't apply, whereas men tend to apply if they have, say, 3 of the 6 qualifications listed. And in today's world, people are becoming experts despite not having formal training in the area. So for the expert, what you can say to yourself is, there are many paths to expertise, especially through experiential learning. It's okay to have in-depth knowledge in some areas and not in all. There is no end to learning, but I don't have to wait until I've learned it all. When I don't know all the answers, I can seek out others to fill the gaps. I am competent even when I don't know it all. And I just realized my dog is snoring in the background, so I apologize if that's distracting. The joys of working from home. So the third type is the soloist. This person believes that true competence is equal to my own unassisted achievement. So doing things alone, must do everything themselves. Do not believe they need help in order to be considered competent. And only achievements that achieved on their own can count towards their accomplishments. They view projects, accomplishments, or ideas that were derived in conjunction with someone else as not being their own, like I said. And being unwilling to ask for help is part of the soloist. Being competent means asking for the resources needed to get the job done. It means asking people who are smarter than you for advice on challenges you face. It also means being able to delegate as much as possible. So new thoughts for type 3. I am being more competent when I ask for what I need to get the job done and when I delegate to others. I welcome the advice from others who might know more about this than I do. I am able to learn from other competent people and use that learning to build my own success. Okay, so type 4, the superwoman or the superman. If I were really competent, I would be able to do it all and do it perfectly. So this is the person who thinks they have to juggle all the roles perfectly. Mom or dad, husband or wife, your work, and anything else that you're involved in, and you want to do them all at the same time, and like I said, do them all perfectly. And it actually combines the perfectionist, the expert, and the soloist, because you're doing it alone. So it's actually terrifying, one of the worst ones, because it combines the top 3. You know everything, you have to do it perfectly, and you have to do it by yourself. So very scary. And I tend to be the superwoman, just being honest. But you overwork yourself, overfunction, and the only fix is to do less. And actually the quarantine has actually helped me take a step back and do less. So it's helped me with being the superwoman. Also learning to delegate. You have to delegate, and learning to say no, which is very hard for me. So for type 4, this is what you can help to change your mindset. It's okay to delegate and accept that others won't do it just like me. It's okay to say no when I know I can't do something, or at the very least, extend the deadline I set for myself. I'm going to follow the Pareto principle and focus on the 20%. The 80-20 rule suggests we should focus on the few larger items that will generate the most significant results. I don't have to operate at the top of my capacity in all areas of life at one time. So definitely a hard type to be. And last, the great mind. I judge myself on ease and speed. If I were really competent, it would come quickly and easily. So this type leaves no room for you to develop yourself. You feel like an imposter when something doesn't come quickly and easily to you. This person holds the bar very high for themselves, and that they have the inherent ability and intelligence. If you have to learn something new, you feel it should be very effortless to learn something new. And this person believes that they should be, further in their journey, further in their career than they actually are right now, thus adding to that imposter syndrome. If something is challenging when you start it, you think there's something wrong with you, rather than, that you've only just begun, thinking that you've only just begun. And this person sees things as black and white. Either you're a genius or you're not, you're an artist or you're not. So type 5, to help change your mindset, instead of seeing setbacks as failures or challenges as ineptitude, I see them as opportunities to grow my competence and skill. Instead of thinking I'm not qualified, I'm going to instead tell myself that I'm experienced right now and expect I am capable of growing into this new role. Efforts and patience, along with time, will help me succeed. Just get back to my presentation here. Okay, so those are the four types. But we need to talk about overcoming the imposter syndrome. I found 3 articles that I really, really liked, and I wanted to include them all. There was one specifically, which I'll talk about last, talking about teachers, and I adjusted that to help us as counselors. Because I just feel, in today's world, we celebrate each other, we lift each other up as counselors, but you can also have that feeling of seeing what someone else is doing and not feeling like you're doing as good work as that person, or just not feeling as accomplished, or feeling like you can do that, putting yourself out there to do trainings, try adding something new to your counseling program. So I wanted to tailor something specific to counselors, which we'll talk about in a minute. But here are a few suggestions to overcome imposter syndrome. Question yourself. If you have a negative thought, pause and take a break. Think about, is it truly accurate? Reflection is key here. Is this emotional experience real, or am I responding based on other outside variables? Does this thought help or hinder me? So again, taking into consideration what we help our students do, and what we've been taught our whole career, and reflecting on our negative thoughts and reframing our thinking. Use the mantra for the type of imposter syndrome that you have. Be mindful of how you're feeling and your beliefs and your emotions. Sit with those feelings and reflect. Put your thoughts in perspective. And here's an example. So if you, for example, you might receive a raise, so you feel distress or guilt because you believe you don't deserve it. So don't let that thought stay there. Go back and examine it and see if it's valid. Otherwise, you'll dwell on those negative things and keep feeding that imposter syndrome. Embrace your success. Again, counselors, we do a great job of celebrating each other, and I picture us with the capes on a few years ago, where we're writing nice things about each other. Really embrace those things, and I have mine hanging, in my office still. If you have an imposter syndrome, it can be tempting to invalidate even the smallest win, thinking you don't deserve it, and resist this and list your successes and allow them to sit with you. And then this will really give you a picture of your accomplishments and help affirm your self-worth. Talk about it. Find a mentor. And this is also in the 7 suggestions for counselors, but find someone who you connect with, who might have the same feelings as you. I feel everyone should have a mentor, or even a therapist. But talk to somebody about how you're feeling, and they're probably more than likely going to say, hey, what you're feeling is not really what's true, and that can get you back to reality. And then show yourself some compassion. Do mindfulness activities. MBCT, or mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, is something you can research if you're really suffering from the imposter syndrome and need to try some of those mindfulness activities. But it helps you reflect on what you're feeling and foster more compassionate, constructive ways of relating to yourself. And then this, like I said, this has become popular in helping people overcome imposter syndrome. So again, just that reflection, that thinking, reframing your thinking, embracing your success, all of those can help you. And don't let that thought sit with you. If you're having those thoughts related to the imposter syndrome, stop and reframe it and talk about it, or don't let yourself continue to think those, because you are good enough and you do deserve what you've accomplished. And here's just a visual, oh, sorry, a visual of overcoming the imposter syndrome and building your self-confidence. I really like the quote on here: confidence is a state of mind. It can be learned. So these activities can help with that. And I really like I didn't quite know where to fit the quote in on the side, but perfection isn't the same as excellence. You don't have to have you don't have to be perfect to have accomplishments or to achieve things. It's not the same thing. So again, everyone will have this presentation. Here's, if you like this, it's in the resources. You can print it and hang it up, and take one of these that I've added here and what really applies to you and what you can use if you're suffering from the imposter syndrome. So some things, there are some quotes on there that what you might be feeling, and some tips and some things that you can do. Celebrate, set goals, experiment, build on your skills and knowledge. But this is just a great little diagram here. Write down your achievements, think about your strengths, which we all have to do that in interviews, and that's hard, but I believe in knowing those before you go to the interview, not thinking about it in the interview. It's really important to do. Let's see. Stop comparing yourself. Don't let your fear sabotage you. Set the bar to a realistic level. Don't set yourself up for disappointment. Write down your key achievements of the last 5 years. Take positive feedback, and then take control. Accept that something that you did was your success. It wasn't luck. So lots more on here to read and think about. So here were the 7 suggestions for counselors, and actually the article that's attached at the end of the presentation, like I said, she was talking about for teachers. And so I have adjusted them to apply to counselors. So the first one is to remind yourself that self-doubt is a natural part of being self-reflective and wanting to be your very best. Like I said earlier, 70% of people will at least have an episode of imposter syndrome. So it's normal, and everyone is gonna feel this. Most people are gonna feel this. And analyzing your work and striving to be better is gonna make you feel like an imposter. It's a normal process. And then reflecting on your shortcomings. That's an important part of growing and improving. So don't be afraid to look at your shortcomings, because you're afraid you're not going to measure up to everyone else or to the bar that you've set for yourself. Again, imposter syndrome is normal, and it will come up from time to time, and it will be, and it is in all different types of people, from celebrities to CEOs to down to college students. Anyone could have struggled with this. Like I said, even the most successful and accomplished people we know have admitted to feeling like they aren't doing enough and aren't good enough. So I really, it makes me feel good that people are talking about this, because that is one way that we can overcome. 2, observe your imposter syndrome triggers and thoughts without judgment. It can try to lead you down that road of self-doubt, but don't let your triggers and your thoughts lead you that way. Again, it's a normal feeling. Don't judge yourself for it or set unrealistic expectations that you should never feel that way. We all feel a form of self-doubt at some point, and just be aware. Pay attention to what is causing you to feel that way, and that will help you recognize those triggers. And here's a quote from the article that the 7 suggestions came from. Something in this situation, think to yourself, something in this situation is triggering feelings of self-doubt. I'm feeling a bit like a fraud right now, but just because I'm thinking and feeling this way at the moment doesn't mean that it's true or that I need to give any consideration to it. I'm just going to observe what's happening, notice what I'm thinking and feeling, and let those thoughts and feelings pass on their own. They always do. So those feelings of self-doubt, feeling like you're an imposter, they will pass. So don't give them more energy. They don't need it, and they won't lead you down that road. 3, use feelings of self-doubt to help you experiment with counseling styles until you figure out which one is right for you. So the person who wrote this article talked about experimenting with all kinds of different teaching styles helped with her imposter syndrome. So when you're feeling like a fraud as a counselor, try out some different styles, do something different. You might be doing something which isn't an authentic expression of who you are. So keep learning about yourself, keep learning about different approaches. Specifically I'm still learning, I did some new things with group counseling this year. And when I first started, I kind of felt like a fraud, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. And I figured it out, and I just kept doing different types of activities with the girls. And we really, by the end of it, was a great experience. And the same as a new teacher, I was told that I had to be strict. Well, and that wasn't me. That didn't work for me. So if, you're feeling like an imposter or a fraud, keep learning about yourself, keep learning different techniques. 6 years as a counselor, and I'm still experimenting and trying new things. And so trial and error is required to discover what you can bring to the counseling field. Best practices are always changing and evolving, and we're always looking for that new technique to use. And also, give yourself some space, because your personality and preference change throughout the years. So be willing to experiment and grow and adapt. Counseling isn't the same it was when you started your career. When I started 6 years ago, or if you started 20 or 30 years ago, same with teaching. It's ever evolving. And we need to adapt, and even when that process induces imposter syndrome, because that's how you become an expert in your craft, to keep experimenting and growing. Don't let that imposter syndrome hold you back. So the 4th thing for teaching or counseling, she suggests accepting that it's impossible to please everyone, and use criticism as an opportunity to reflect on why you've made your choices. And this one is very hard for me. We think that everything, you have to please everyone, and everyone has to like you, and that's just not reality. I struggle in accepting that not everyone is going to like me or my work, and that's something that I'm working on. Doing a presentation, I did a presentation on self-care a few months ago, and I was like, my feelings of self-doubt, people aren't going to want to hear this. They've heard it a million times. When really at the end, I was told that I brought a fresh perspective to it. So, put those feelings of self-doubt out of the way and put yourself out there. Another quote that really resonated with me, and I've adjusted it for a counselor. It's part of the price we pay for being in the position of a counselor leader. Not everyone's going to like what we do. Some principals will watch our best classroom lesson or group or interaction with a student, and they'll be unimpressed. Some students and parents are going to dislike us no matter what we do. Some of our colleagues will disagree with the way we manage our counseling program. There are people who look at how you set your program up and think, not impressed. But what we can do is take that criticism as an opportunity to reflect on ourselves. So what other people say, is there really some truth in that critique? What can you learn from it? And use it as an opportunity to grow. Be honest. Yeah, I did make a mistake. And then how are you going to improve and grow from that? And then also, look at the critique and think about why you made a certain decision, and if it was the right choice, and if there's opportunity for you to go in a different direction. So all of these things will help keep that imposter syndrome down if you're reflecting on yourself and being confident in the choices that you've made. Again, when you're grounded firmly in the why behind what you're doing, and you're honest with yourself about, things that you might not be your strengths, you're combating that imposter syndrome, and you don't need every person's approval to know that you're doing a good job. And also analyzing your decisions, make sure you're making the right ones, that we're, keeping students in mind at all times. And you won't feel like a fraud if someone criticizes you, and you can rebound from your imposter syndrome more quickly. 5, be honest with your students when you don't know what you're doing. I think that's not only important for teachers, but for counselors as well. They know when we're not being real. Either they'll tell us or they'll show it on their face. So if you're trying a new technique or a new core classroom instruction lesson, or a new tactic in your group counseling or even individual counseling, let them know. Say, hey, I read about this, technique or therapy, and I want to try it out, and let's see how it goes. And they'll, they really respect transparency. Students do. Saying, I don't know, let's figure it out together is better. This is going back to, if the student asks you something and you don't know, saying you don't know and figuring it out together is better than making up an answer. Being honest with yourself. Sorry. If the kid asks you something you don't know, Google it together, and model that as a problem solving strategy. And it probably comes up more in the classroom, but we have lots of interactions with students and can show them that we don't have all the answers, but we can help, we can get the answers. And students love that, learning alongside of us, or knowing that they taught us something. And, so sometimes dropping that, I'm the adult and I know everything, and showing them that you're a learner as well, makes the imposter syndrome easier to manage, that you're not feeling fake. So the 6th suggestion is to find a colleague who's willing to be your imposter syndrome co-conspirator. It's important to have another counselor that you can be vulnerable with. Some counselors are the only counselor in their building, so you might have to find someone at our group meetings, or reach out to Michelle for someone who you might be compatible with, to have that person that you can rebound with, and you can equip each other with information needed to feel more confident. Ask them, tell them you're struggling with something, and see, ask if they can help. It's okay to talk to someone and say that you don't know what you're doing. And more than likely they're going to say, hey, yeah, I've been there, or I've got this certain topic that I don't know what I'm doing either, So look for those people that you all can help each other out, build each other up, bounce ideas off of each other. Or just say, hey, you're really down on yourself right now, and you have a lot of accomplishments, and just not let that imposter syndrome creep up. And finally, change your self-talk so imposter syndrome propels you to be even better. So if it's one of the quotes from earlier about the 5 types, that would help you. When that imposter syndrome does creep up, you know, how can you talk to yourself to say that you are good enough, and that to get that self-doubt away and not let you go down that road. But push against that voice that comes up that says you're not good enough or you need to do more. And one final quote for today: remind yourself that you are enough, your efforts are enough, you have limited amount of time and energy, and you choose to channel your resources into doing the best job that is sustainable for you, regardless of what everyone else is doing. You don't have to be perfect, and you will improve over time as you get feedback. You're going to stay focused on the kids and streamlining your program, because if you can do that, you can't go wrong. Okay, so changing that positive self-talk that you are enough, and you are doing great work for kids. So finally, I love at first when I saw this, I said, be the goldfish. But I also want you to be you, be who you are. You are good enough, but having that confidence of the goldfish, that he, is like a shark or can be a shark. Be you, but be the goldfish. Here are a list of references. I really encourage you to read the Unpacking Michelle Obama's Imposter Syndrome, and just do some more research. The Good Enough Now by Jessica Pettit. Those are really good topics to research. I hope everyone enjoyed and learned something, and I believe we'll be able to stick around for questions. Thank you.